ICQ Podcast episode 317. NanoVNA, are they any good? Well, hello fellow Amateur Radio enthusiasts and welcome to our 317th episode of the ICQ Amateur Radio Podcast. Supported this episode by Dave Pyle, Kilo Whiskey 1, Delta X-Ray, Tim Price, Golf 4 Yankee Bravo Uniform, and of course our monthly and subscription donors. In this episode, Martin M1LB is joined by Leslie, Golf 0, Charlie India Bravo, Edmund, Mike 0, Mike November Golf, Dan, Kilo Bravo 6 November Uniform, and Ruth, Kilo Mike 4, Lima Alpha Oscar, to discuss latest amateur radio news. Myself, Colin M6BOY, rounds up the news in brief, and this episode's feature question is NanoVNA, and are they any good? Well, I keep saying it's our donors that help keep us advert free and stops us punting sort of weird underwear and meat boxes and vitamin tablets and God knows what else. So I really would like to thank Dave Pyle, Kilo Whiskey 1 Delta X-Ray, who sends a quick message on. So it's a great show, guys. Keep up the good work. And Tim Price, Golf 4 Yankee Bravo Uniform, who you'll hear a bit more about at the end of the show with a report from being in Australia there. Tim set up a monthly subscription donor and Dave's a one-off donor. So thank you guys for setting up those subscription models and donations to us. Really do appreciate it. It will keep us advert free. What I ask you to do, guys, is think about the value you get from the show and put a value on it and visit www.icqpodcast.com/donate, where anything you can send our way. I say it's greatly appreciated and helps keep us advert free. Think of those cups of coffee, newspapers and all sorts of other things that you purchase. And I say think about what value we might give you, and that might give you an idea of a subscription amount to set up and send along our way. Right, well, let's move on with the show, and let's join Martin, Leslie, Edmund, Dan, and Ruth as they discuss the latest amateur radio news, including Hams rescue a kidnapped girl and a new interim ARRL CEO. As always, guys, hope you enjoy.
The ICQ Amateur Ham Radio Podcast, serving the amateur ham radio community fortnightly since 2008.
Well, hi guys, and welcome to episode 317 of the ICQ podcast and tonight's news roundtable. Tonight I'm joined by Mr. Leslie Butterfield G0CIB. Hi Leslie.
Good evening, Martin. Great to be on again.
Yeah, good to have you, Leslie, and I'm sure that while Martin Rothwell's not here, you can make me misbehave as well.
Me, Martin, I always behave. I never stir it. Never. Not to my knowledge.
Never. Okay. Okay. We also got Mr. Edmund Spicer M0MNG. Hi, Edmund.
Hello, Martin. Hello, everybody.
Yeah, good to have you, Edmund, and we'll talk more about it later, but you and I are out at the weekend, so we can cover that a bit later. Moving across the pond, I have Mr. Dan Romanchik, KB6NU. Hi, Dan.
Hello, all.
Yeah, good to have you, Dan. And as I say, you didn't make the first one of the year, but we missed you. But it's
I didn't want to miss two in a row.
No. We wouldn't want you to miss two in a row, Dan, because we value your comments. And tonight we also got Ruth Willet, KM4LAO. And Ruth joins us tonight for a very quick one because she's back at working again at college, aren't you? So, hi, Ruth.
Hello, Martin. It's good to be here.
Yeah, good to have you. Okay, our first news story starting off. The title says, "A Radio Hams rescue teenage girl from kidnapper." Now, this is in India, and basically a group of youths kidnapped a 14-year-old girl, and the grandparents were very worried, put out lots of contacts to lots of people, and looks like amateurs actually found her. They put contacts out through amateur radio as well. So, what's your thoughts on this one, Leslie?
My thoughts, it's a good news story. Thankfully, she was found safe. You know, radio amateurs are called to help out sometimes. We hope these situations never occur, but when they do, I know always that there are radio amateurs that are willing to step up to the plate and just help out. And in this case, it was a really good result, and that's what counts.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Ruth, I mean, being a young lady yourself, this poor girl must have been terrified being kidnapped, I would have thought.
I would certainly imagine so. It was definitely very humbling to read it. It's definitely a very good news story. For me, it was unique reading because I've seen a lot of news stories about hams with helping with lots of different activities, but this was the first time I've seen one about fellow amateurs helping rescue this kidnapped girl. So good for them, and I'm very glad that she's back home safe.
Yeah, I agree with you, and a lot seems to be going on in India. Edmund, you got any thoughts on this one?
Well, amateur radio and kidnapping weren't two things that I immediately thought that I would see in the same sentence. I know that amateur radio can serve the community by summoning medical assistance, or I think there was a case around the turn of a millennium where a scrubland fire was stopped because the radio amateur spotted it and was able to summon the fire brigade when no mobile signal was available. So things like that I had encountered, but I never dreamed that I would read a story where amateur radio was involved in bringing a kidnapping to an end. So it just goes to show that this hobby of ours can be useful in ways that you haven't thought of or dreamed of yet, which is yet another reason why it's such a great hobby, Martin.
Yeah, certainly. Well, I remember our little club had a small helping of the police one day when we were out playing, and they were absolutely gobsmacked at the fact that how quick we could mobilise and one thing and another and take control of the situation, pretty much help them out. And we weren't trying to be flash, but good. Dan, do you cover stories from India on your blog?
I don't usually, but I've actually seen several stories from out of India where the ham radio operators have helped locate a missing person, or in this case, someone who'd been kidnapped. And I don't know, I just find that very interesting. The police over here, for example, wouldn't think of calling in the local club to help out. I guess maybe that's because we have a little bit more infrastructure.
Yeah, well, you're right. I think from my knowledge, and I could be totally wrong here, there's not a lot of infrastructure in some of the parts of India, and ham radio does seem to be very important to them. So that's a good thing out in India. Moving on
Absolutely.
Yeah, moving on to our next news story, and this one could be quite a long one, I would suggest. We have to be a little bit careful because we've seen lots of rumours. We're going to report the facts. Barry Shelley, K1VXY, is now the interim ARRL CEO. After Howard Mickle got deposed at the board meeting, he's now taken over. Dan, what's your thoughts?
Well, I've seen lots of different takes on this, and it's really, really hard to get to the crux of the matter. I've asked several ARRL board members what's really happened, and they all say, well, we can't really talk about it because it's a personnel matter. That's their usual shield when you ask them tough questions like that. But apparently several things have happened. The board, for whatever reason, wasn't real thrilled with Mickle's performance. Apparently, even though amongst the amateur community, he seemed to have a pretty good, the amateur community seemed to have a pretty good opinion of him. So there's a disconnect there, and it's hard to know. The second part about this, of course, is how the ARRL handled this. Even this story they published on the website that Barry Shelley is now the new interim CEO, that title is kind of a misleading title, because the real story here is that not that he's interim CEO, but that they dumped the other CEO. So, I just think whether or not he should have been replaced, the board didn't handle it very well, and that's a troubling thing.
Yeah, but from what I remember, there was supposed to be transparency. ARRL were going to have transparency. Now, I know that some things you can't tell everything, and let's be honest about it, and I'm not taking sides and I'm not haranguing the ARRL, but I just think the wording of the announcements left so much for speculation.
Well, absolutely, and that's why I said I told them, I said the board members I'd been in contact with, they would have been better off not saying anything at all until they could release a more complete statement on it.
Yeah. Ruth, what's your thoughts on this one?
It's an interesting one for sure. I mean, I'm disappointed that the former CEO is gone so soon. It seemed like he had some pretty good ideas for positive steps moving forward, trying to get different people involved. Who knows what would have worked or not, but seemed like he was trying to make an effort and get people back interested in the hobby and staying with ARRL. And he hadn't been there very long, so I was certainly very surprised to see this article come out. Like you two have said, I definitely hope there can be some sort of clarification why the change took place and whatnot, although I'm not sure because, I've been hearing the same. It's a personal matter, so I don't know if we'll ever hear anything. But I definitely hope that we can find a permanent CEO at some point so that we can keep moving forward, and hopefully he'll be able to stay longer.
Yeah, I hope so. Now, I mean, nothing to do with Howard, but my last major computer job I took on was quite a senior management role within a company, and I was there on a 6-month probation period. At the end of 6 months, they said, I'm sorry, we don't need you anymore. You've done what we were expecting in 2 years. Goodbye, sort of thing. We haven't got any money. We can't afford you. Boards sometimes do strange things, and I came away from my feeling just thinking that I was taken on for a year or taken on full-time employment because it was cheaper than hiring me as a contractor. But I'm being a cynical old devil. Edmund, I'm going to let you go next before I get Leslie in on this one, because he's probably got a fair bit to say on this one. So, down to you, Edmund.
Well, I haven't, because I'm not a member of the ARRL, and seeing as I'm speaking from England, my national society is the RSGB. So I am disinterested in this story in the sense that it doesn't directly affect me. The identity of who is the CEO of the ARRL at any given moment, but I am not uninterested because as a radio amateur and the citizen of the world, it's in my interest for every national radio society to be doing well and doing a good job at representing its members. So I wish Howard Mickles, I think that was his name, wasn't it? Have I got to pronounce that right?
Yeah.
Yep, that's it.
Howard, I wish him all the best, especially if his departure was not what he would have wanted for himself. I also wish the new gentleman coming in, Barry Shelley, all the best with his tenure. And I just hope that whatever the final outcome of this is, that the ARRL ends up sooner or later with somebody at the helm who will do a really good job at doing what the CEO needs to do, what the CEO does need to do, and the identity of that person is way above my pay grade, and I'm very glad that it's not me who's got to do it. And that's all I can say.
Yeah, well, the thing with a CEO is the higher up the pyramid you get, the less people are going to be able to do it, and the more lonely it gets in many ways. As you move from the factory floor into management, into senior management, they become lower. You become more, not lonely, but you become less of a team player because there's less people at that level that you can interface with, and you have to work with your team below, and your team. You manage your team, but your team never accepts you as a full member of the team. You're always seen as still part of them, in the them and us scenario. But that's my just feelings, and maybe I'm just a bit of a cynical old devil this day. Somebody the other day, one of my friends said, I was turning into a grumpy old man. So, round to you, Leslie.
Oh, well, I don't believe that for one moment, Martin. Anyway, yeah, back to the story. Yes, what can I say? these things happen within companies. It's unfortunate. I've looked on the internet and I've seen lots of huffing and puffing. Who knows? Look, I understand this is difficult. I mean, I'm going to say, first of all, that I am a member of the ARRL. I understand why, they have a desire to be open, but in cases like this, it's difficult for them. And I do understand that. And I do agree that whoever, this is a very, very difficult role. And whoever takes it on next, I wish them all the very best of luck, because it is a very, very difficult job indeed.
Yeah, it certainly is. And in fairness, you got qualifications on that because you was an ARRL board member at one point in time.
No, I was an RSGB board member in the past.
RSGB board. I was promoting you.
I don't know if that's a promotion or not.
No, I've worked on the shop floor. I've done the office jobs. I've done the manager's jobs. Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying, Martin. And yeah, it does get a bit lonely there. And I've had the emails, the angry emails sent to me. So I've been on the receiving end of flack, and I've got a tin helmet just under my kitchen sink, especially for that particular scenario. But no, I'm well used to that. But like I said, it's a very difficult job, and whoever takes over, I wish them all the luck in the world.
Yeah, I wish them all luck, and actually, I do thank Howard Mickle for his interviews he did with Frank for us. We really did appreciate that, Howard. If you ever listen to this, we really certainly appreciated what you did for us. Last words from you, Dan, because I know you blogged a lot about this.
Yeah, so the Central Division, I think he's the Central Division Director, Kermit Carlson, he has W9XA has promised a full report on this, and so we're going to wait to see that. I just think that the way they did it, I mean, it's almost like they're determined to put their foot in their mouths. This ARRL board. Like I say, I've heard so many people tell me that this is the last straw as far as their ARRL membership, and that's really such a critical thing right now. But I guess we'll have to see. We'll have to see the report, see what that says, and then push forward with a new search committee, and hopefully we'll get someone who at least has the same good ideas that Howard Mickle had.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100%, guys, on that. And once again, I reiterate, thank you very much, Howard, for the interviews you did with Frank for us. They were very much appreciated. And I'm sure, I do know that our listeners found them very interesting. And we wish you every success as you move forward. Let's hope you find something good. Continue with our ARRL theme. The ARRL are still arguing to continue to have access to the 3 gigahertz spectrum. Now, not an area I play in, but don't support each other and we keep giving spectrum away or conceding. Suddenly, you may find that we don't have anything up in the microwave bands, and with HF getting poorer and poorer by the amount of noise and poor sunspot cycles, we're going to be a little bit screwed if we ain't careful. Ruth, what's your thoughts on trying to keep hold of this 3 gigs band?
I think it's very important to try to keep the 3 gigs, try to keep access to the microwave spectrum. These bands, I know they're very used and important by hams. I mean, for example, continued access to the microwave spectrum is absolutely critical for Gulf and some of the other future AMSAT missions, as they're planning satellites moving forward, so we can try to get satellites into higher orbits so we can work farther. So it's definitely troubling to see this, of course, and I'm hoping that we can at least keep our foot down and keep some of the spectrum.
Yeah, as I say, if we lose the spectrum, that will create us a major problem. And the other thing is, what do you do if you send a satellite up to work on these frequencies, and suddenly you lose the band? You can't.
You call out the AA.
Yeah, in your dreams. You can't reprogram a satellite remotely, I wouldn't have thought. Go on then, Leslie. What's your thoughts, apart from calling the AA out?
Well, when I'm going to sort of look at it from a UK perspective. The Spectrum used to be a corner of the Home Office. You know, if you go back in 70s and the 80s, and no one was really interested in it that much. If you look at it now in terms of technology and usage, and especially income to the state, you know, it's cash machine time. And I like to compare it to the revenue we got from North Sea oil. But this is the problem, that we've got so few amateurs using these spectrums. There are radio amateurs using them, don't get me wrong, but you've got such a commercial interest, and that's what we're up against. And I suspect the same commercial forces are in the States as well. And you know, they're looking at the government of the day, whoever they are looking for new innovation, and that's going to put pressure on the bands. And the only way to tackle that is to have strong societies and to shall we say, pressurise the government of the day.
Yeah. And I think, though, you've got to keep some form of experimental usage, because if you give it all away to commercial use, then a lot of the development that us amateurs do that does knock off back into
absolutely correct
world, they'll lose that. They'll lose that lock, stock and barrel. Edmund, I know you're not a microwave person, but what's your thoughts?
I'm not a microwave person in the sense that I don't do it, but I'm very much interested in experimentation that goes on up there, and I do like to hear about what other amateurs are achieving on microwave frequencies. And as an aside, at our local club, where I would say the vast majority of people are probably HF only, or HF first and foremost, just before Christmas we had a talk from a guest speaker that covered, amongst other things, some of the microwave bands, and that was one of the best attended club meetings we've had for a long time. So if anybody who's involved with microwaves is listening to this and thinking, oh, well, I might like to give a talk at my local club, but no, that none of them ever go above 30 megahertz, so nobody there would be interested, then don't just assume that's the case. Contact your club and make the offer anyway. You might be pleasantly surprised.
Can I say something there? Please contact your local clubs, because I know they will be interested. I mean, radio, yeah, some of us buy commercial kit, but those types of frequencies are still homebrew stuff. You know, you can't really buy off the shelf. And I think it would be really, really interesting just to put a spark of the imagination and try and get interest again. Why not? Please contact them. I know they'd be delighted.
Yeah,
well, my local club certainly was. But to answer your question, Martin, even if this is a done deal, I think it's really important that representations are made, because if we roll over and capitulate 3 gigs, then that's not much of a deterrent when the powers that be come for other bands. Whereas if we kick up a stink, it might make them think twice at least if they're thinking about taking other frequencies away from us. So we might not win this battle, but it's the fact that feedback and representations have been made, I think, is a very encouraging thing.
Certainly is. Now, before I pass this to Dan for the final words on this, just for our American cousins, the reference Leslie made to AA is the Automobile Association and not Alcoholics Anonymous. Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was the size of battery that Leslie was going to be using in some way, shape or form.
That's another story. The judge said we weren't to mention that. So, okay, over to you, Dan, for last words on this one. What's your thoughts?
So I hadn't thought about what Edmund said there earlier about making representation here on this issue, because really this is a done deal. But I guess it is an important point to show that we're not just sitting idly by, and we won't sit idly by for other frequency bands. But really, this is a done deal because, here in the U.S. anyway, what they're primarily going to use these frequencies for is 5G. And whether or not 5G is ready for deployment, which is, from all I know, it's not really. I mean, that's just the way it's going to go. I mean, 5G is going to be, it's like the next big thing, right? In all kinds of different fields, not just communication. So, it's a done deal, but we should probably still make us think about it, just because when the next time this happens, we'll be a little bit more prepared, maybe.
Yeah, I agree with you. And equally, Dan, you and I won't fall out over 5G in the same way as our Prime Minister and your President are going to over the Huawei running part of the network here in the UK. But we'll still continue to talk, Dan.
Well, like I was saying about 5G sort of taking over, so I'm here in Detroit, and 5G is actually going to be a big thing in autonomous vehicles. I mean, people don't realize that. Nowadays, a lot of people think 5G, they're thinking, oh, okay, this is the next generation of cell phones. But it's not. It's a lot more than that. And that's why it's a done deal, because it's not just the telecoms that are going to be using it, but lots of other industries.
Yeah, certainly. Driverless cars,
Definitely.
as you say.
That's really interesting, the point about the autonomous vehicles, which I hadn't connected, which makes a lot of sense. It's actually pretty cool, just because I go to Kettering in Flint, and we've got a lot of students doing projects with autonomous vehicles and whatnot. So I'm going to have to look into the whole 5G side of that, too. It's fascinating.
It is, really.
Yeah, well, last year when I was up at the RSGB convention and we left to come home, and it's held up in Milton Keynes, as I was driving down the road, I actually spotted some test vehicles running on the pavement. They were like small parcel delivery units. They were running on the pavement, but they were testing them around Milton Keynes. I think it would have been Amazon, but it was still interesting to see. Quite a little shock. Fortunately, it wasn't on the road, but they were at least testing already. So it's coming, whether we like it or not.
I just said absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on, somebody said they like the innovation at microwaves. Well, a couple of our German colleagues have just done 65 kilometres on 134 gigahertz. Now, that's not just FT8. That is SSB and CW. So they've done CW and SSB as well. And I haven't got the calculator in front of me, but 65 kilometres to me is round about 40, just over 40 miles, 42, 43 miles. That's a phenomenal distance for that sort of thing. Edmund, do you want to go first?
Yes, it's a smidge over 40 miles, and that is a really good achievement at that frequency, especially as they were using relatively inefficient modes such as SSB. And whilst I'm not the world's biggest fan of FT8, for an application like this, I think it could come in very handy indeed. So the fact they could do 40 miles using SSB rather suggests that if they had been using FT8 or equivalent, then they could have perhaps managed a contact over a longer or a more obstructed path. So I look forward to hearing about their future achievements, and I'm sure that they'll go on to push the boundaries even further. And why do they do it? They do it because it's hard, which is something that appeals to me, because they or anybody could have ordered a couple of £10 handhelds on 70 cents off eBay and probably made the contact, but they did it the hard way. And if it was easy, everybody would be doing it on 134 gigs, and the fact they're not means that their effort and their achievement is to be celebrated. Well done, guys.
Yeah, I agree with you totally. Leslie, what's your thoughts?
Well, I like playing on HF, and this stuff is mind-blowing for me. It just really is. Normal HF ground wave is about sort of 40k, 40k, something like that. And to try to do that on microwaves, it's like, well, 65k. Wow, what can I say? I'm waiting until they put out a video on YouTube so I actually see the setup and how they do it. Could be really, really interesting. And I look forward to seeing the information.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be coming. Dan, what's your thoughts?
I was trying to figure out how much power they were using. I was searching through the two websites you mentioned in the notes, but I couldn't find out how much power they were using. But yeah, it really is kind of amazing because up at those frequencies, you really don't get that much range, and this is pretty cool. And just connecting it back to our previous discussion, trying to use these higher frequencies for stuff like I can't think of the name now, 5G technologies, just because of the bandwidth needed. So, I mean, this is a real step forward. This is a good example of amateur radio advancing the state of the radio art. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dan, because there'll be lots of people in the commercial market that will be terrified of operating at these sort of frequencies, I'm sure. So,
and also, Dan, not so much the power that they were using, the gain on the dishes at each end would mean, I'm guessing, that the dishes would be reasonably sizable. They wouldn't be tiny, tiny, tiny. And the problem you've then got is that the bigger the dish, the narrower the bandwidth, so the more accurate you have to be when you line the dishes up at each other. And you could move your dish by millimeters, probably, and the signal coming in from the other guy would go from nothing to S9 and down to nothing again. So at those frequencies with the dish size involved, I would imagine probably half of the battle is actually lining the dishes up at each other, which to my mind makes the achievement even more remarkable.
Yeah, you got a good point there.
Yeah, I was thinking, I didn't think the dishes would be that big, but certainly lining them up, because at that frequency, the wavelength is going to be quite small, so the dishes won't be like 60 centimetre dishes or something, but in my opinion, but I could be wrong. Ruth, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, everybody's pretty much covered what I wanted to say, but it's such a cool story. I've said before, I love records. I love seeing what hams end up doing, how they push the boundaries of what's possible on the frequencies we have available. So I think it's awesome they got this record. I was very much enjoying the whole dish discussion and that whole side of things, which is very cool to think about. And personally, for me, I think it's awesome they did it on both single sideband and CW, because I've certainly done that myself when I'm wanting worked all states or whatnot. But to have them do it for this type of record on both modes is awesome, because certainly it might have been easier using FT8 or something, but I think it's very cool. They were able to do it on both single sideband and CW, and I'm very curious to see what these hams do next and see what else they can do.
Yeah, we agree. So I've mentioned the two guys' names, Michael, DB6NT, and Roland, DK4RC. So congratulations, guys, and keep up the good work. So our next news story, Australian bushfires causing major telecom outages, but hams are actually on duty down there in Australia trying to help with the fire, and it's a bit of luck now that they've had a little bit of rain, but it won't be long that they could restart, which is the frightening thing. But what's your thoughts on this one, Ruth?
Very glad to hear it. With how devastated Australia has been because of the bushfires, I'm so glad that the hams there and in the general area are coming to help and helping establish communications, because that's what you need. You need to be able to communicate. So I'm very glad that they're there. Great to hear it, and thankful that for now at least the fires in Australia have come down. Hopefully it'll stay that way and they won't spark back up again.
Yeah, I think everybody's hoping they won't spark up again, Ruth. So yeah, I think the hams are doing a great job. So Leslie, what's your thoughts on the Australian bushfire problem?
Oh, what can one say? Well, first of all, yes, I've got the amateur radio interest, but I think we ought to look at the other volunteers as well that are assisting and fighting the fires. I think they're doing a tremendous job, and we really ought to thank them. I know some of them have unfortunately passed away in that service, and it's humbling that people do that. what can one say? I'm just lost for words. Like I said, that when certain things happen, people step up to the plate, and they've had some people really get involved in it, and I wish them all the well.
Yeah, and a lot of people have done a lot there. All sorts of things like people. I've seen YouTube videos where people have been rescuing animals, and the poor animals have been coming to humans because they want to be rescued, and sort of wild animals that have decided that we're much better than the fire, and that's quite humbling in many ways. Edmund, what's your thoughts?
Well, I echo what Leslie's just said, obviously, and I've been watching some of the images on my TV screen, and I don't ever, in my 40-something years I've been alive, ever remember seeing images quite like those in the context of a news bulletin. So, yeah, and I've seen photographs of commercial radio masts on the SWL blog online. There's been a few photographs put up in the last couple of weeks of commercial broadcast transmitters that have burnt down, and radio stations, broadcast radio stations, going off the air. So massive structures like that being affected. It's not at all surprising that cell phone towers and the like, which are a lot smaller and a lot more numerous, will have also been badly affected by these fires. Just looking at the frequencies listed for use in Region 3 as not net or spot frequencies, but centres of activity frequencies. And they have quoted frequencies from 80 metres up to 15 metres. With propagation as it is, I wouldn't imagine that many of them would be audible in the UK. It's probably the lower bands, if there's grey line propagation, that we need to worry about. So the centres of activity are 3,600 kilohertz, which in the UK I think is kind of in like a guard band, isn't it? Because LSB shouldn't start till 3603, and digital stuff, there isn't much above 3,592, which is or was where Whisper was. So 3,600 on the nose should be pretty clear here in Europe. The 40 metre frequency, though, 7110, that is in a part of the band that's often used by French, German and Dutch stations, I seem to hear around there. So if you want to operate on 40 metres SSB, and you want to do it at a time of day when there's even a chance of grey line propagation, then stay away probably from 7110, if at all possible, just in case you ended up inadvertently causing QRM to emergency comms. The only other one's 20 metres, 14,300 will, outside of contest weekends, there's probably not that much activity on 20 metres, much above, I don't know, 14,280 or something like that. So, yeah, please be mindful of these frequencies, folks.
Yeah, that's a good point, Edmund. Good point. Thanks for reading those out. So, Dan, I know you guys have forest fires in the States. I believe sometimes it happens around California, but which is a ways away from you. But I don't think you have anything quite as big as Australia's just had, do you?
No, I think this is even worse than the California fires. But I have a little twist on this. So the BBC Digital Planet show actually has a report on this. And they did a pretty good report on the amateur radio portion of it. And it showed the guys, what they actually did was, it sounds like they actually set up some kind of mesh network there to sort of take the place of the cell system. Then they also reported on another group, and this is where I think amateur radio probably could do some good too. This separate group set up a LoRa network with air quality monitors. And so they were able to get air quality reports using this LoRa network, which I thought was kind of fascinating. So I think maybe that LoRa, that LoRa business is something that maybe hams over here in the U.S. should think about in situations like this, like in California. Set up a bunch of air quality sensors and use radio to gather all that data.
Yeah, something I hadn't thought about, Dan, and we will put the link to the BBC report in our show notes on the website because that's very useful. But yeah, it's just unbelievable, the amount of fire and the amount of homes. I think last time I heard it was something like over 3,000 homes have been burnt down and thousands of acres of forestry is gone. And they really don't know if they've lost certain species of animals due to the fire. So it's pretty horrible, but let's hope they get it fully under control soon, and let's hope it all sorts. So that concludes our news stories for this podcast. I'm just going to ask the guys what they've been up to. And as always, I'm going to start with Leslie, because Leslie, you get excited. Tell us what you've been up to.
Well, first thing, I'm going to do a mention about a Facebook page that I joined, and it's been sort of my activity sort of this month, and it's called AM Amateur Radio, and there's seems to be a bit of a resurgence on the use of AM, ancient modulation on HF bands, and they're having things like AM parties. Look, it's starting, guys, and it's getting activity on the band, and I've been listening to it, and I just think, it's getting things going. It's a bit of fun. Why not? Just it doesn't sound like the audio's a lot better than the Donald Duck I'm used to. But yeah, it's been good fun. What else has been happening? Yeah, and the other thing, Martin, I was at my local radio club, and unfortunately, a power supply, we had a nice spark, and lots of smoke come out of it. So I'll put my head inside it, and I'm trying to repair that at the moment. So that's on the bench. That's the only thing that's been happening here. Back over to you, Martin.
All right, so sounds like you've been busy. I'll throw it over to Dan. What have you been up to, Dan, since Christmas?
Well, geez, you don't have enough time to talk about what I've done since Christmas. I'll just give you what's happened to me in the last several days. So Saturday, I taught another successful one-day tech class. Had a bunch of University of Michigan students in there, and that went pretty well. Sunday, I kind of took the day off. Yesterday, though, or Monday, I joined a couple of friends of mine, and we introduced some brownies, which are really young Girl Scouts here, to Morse code. We had to make little code practice oscillators, and it was amazing how well they took to Morse code. And then yesterday I gave a talk at our local library on sort of basics of amateur radio. So I've been a really busy guy lately.
You certainly have, Dan. And I did see one of your videos of last year where you did a short talk at the library, and I really enjoyed it, Dan. So that was good. Girl Scouts and Morse code, always a winner. That one. So that's good, Dan. Edmund, you've been a little bit quiet for a while. What have you been up?
In terms of turning the radio on and talking to people, next to nothing since the start of 2020. Been busy with other things. The only thing of note is that in my attic I have a dipole for the 4-meter band, 70 megahertz. It has been horizontally polarized in my little VHF antenna farm upstairs inside my attic. And the plan was during the summer of 2019, I was going to work all over Europe on SSB and CW, no FT8 at all, and make contacts all over the place. And in the event, I made 0 contacts. So I went up there midweek and flipped it, so it is now vertical. And the reason for that is that there is, I am told, a fledgling 4-meter FM vertically polarized net on Friday evenings at 7:30 local time, and it involves stations along the South Coast Strip in West Sussex, say Brighton to the east and Chichester to the west. Don't know if signals will go particularly far inland. I think it's mainly along the coastline type thing. But if anybody is in range and if they wanted to join in, they would be very welcome. And the frequency is 70.400, 70.4 FM vertical. So if I remember, I might be taking part in that. But other than that, Martin, unless I've forgotten anything, I have done absolutely nothing.
Well, sometimes it's good to do nothing and recharge the batteries. Now I know you got your antenna vertically. Next time I'm down your part of the world, I'll try and put my 4-metre rig in the car and see if we can work you on the way down. That'll be interesting. Might annoy Carol a bit, but, you know, because I'm on the radio, but we'll see what we can do on that one. So that'll be good. Yeah, there's a 4-metre net in London on a Thursday night, I believe, and I've joined it a few times. Around about 8 o'clock local time, and I think it's 70.300, which is there where they meet. So, Ruth, what have you been up to in amateur radio in the last month since I last spoke to you?
I've been staying busy. A lot of the last month I was still on winter break, so I had a little more time for ham radio, which was great. I got to do the North American QSO party on CW, finished with over 200 QSOs, which was really great for me with my home location. I actually got to a Gwinnett Amateur Radio Society club meeting in Gwinnett County, Georgia, which is the first time I've actually been at a club meeting in person there in a while. It was my first club. I normally Skype in, but I got to actually be there in person this time, which was great. I've been roving on satellites a bunch. Got to do Winterfield Day with GARS as well. Attended a club meeting here in Augusta. And then something pretty cool is one of my friends here in Augusta is teaching for middle schoolers, and they were discussing math and functions, and she's a ham radio operator as well. So she was discussing Morse code and its connection with math. So I had fun. She had me make a little video demonstrating what Morse code is and talking about how I use it, and then sending a little message for the students. So I had a lot of fun doing that for them. So I've been staying busy, having a lot of fun in ham radio, and looking forward to the month ahead.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you've been having a lot of fun. And don't forget, Ruth, it's only about 3 months away, and we'll all be together in the States. You'll meet some of the mad crew, put it that way.
It's going to be great fun. I'm so excited for Hamvention, so excited to meet some more of you.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it, Ruth. Leslie won't be with us, unfortunately, but maybe another year. So, all in all, what else have I been doing? Well, like Dan, I've been doing a club talk. I did a club talk yesterday. Leslie found out to his peril because he rang me right in the middle of it, and I had to push him to answer box, and I apologised.
No worries.
Yeah, I was doing a club talk, Leslie. I was in full-scale presentation mode, and I get excited when I do those. Done a fair amount of VHF simplex. Been trying to do VHF simplex for the last couple of weeks, just for something different, just trying something, see how many people are actually on and listening. Did upgrade an old computer, put a much newer version of Linux on it. Not that I'll probably ever use it, but it taxed the brain for a little while. Moving down, Sutton and Cheam are going to the Science Museum on the 8th of February. There's a special exhibition by GCHQ and talking about the Enigma machine, I believe. And you have to book tickets, although they're free. You have to book tickets, and a large number of Sutton and Cheam people are going, and we've booked for 11:30. So if any listener wants to join us, you go to the Science Museum's website, book yourself a ticket, and then say hi to us when you're there. What else have I done? Morse code. We had an interesting discussion with a group of kids or youngsters, and we were talking about all sorts of things. And I was talking to them, and I said, well, of course, you lot think we're all fuddy-duddies and one thing and another. I said, you know those codes you use on your phone for sending text messages like LOL and all this sort of thing? And yeah. I said, well, it's really old hat, really, because Morse code operators, even before there was radio and wireless, were using short codes to send messages over wires. And I was explaining to them, they use these short code messages because they got paid by the number of words they sent. And if you could send 2 letters for WX for weather, and the guy at the other end writes weather, or OM for old man, and the guy writes old man the other end, you can get more information through quick. So they were quite surprised, but they went, all right. I said, there's nothing new in this industry, in this world, really. It just goes round and comes around. Edmund and I are out on Sunday at a rally. We're going down, when this podcast releases, we'll be on Canby Island, the East Essex, South Essex rather, Amateur Radio Society, the rally on Canby Island this weekend. We've been invited along to meet the public, and I believe we've got a stand, Edmund, and everything, so that'll be good. And one last thing, don't forget Dayton. We are looking forward to being in Dayton this year again. Please come and chat to us. We haven't got a table, so we haven't got a base, but you can't really miss us in our orange shirts. Okay, there might be other people wearing orange shirts there, but there won't be a group of orange shirts. So we'll be there. Come up and chat to us. And one question for you, Dan. Are you doing another one-day tech class, or are you going to join us on the main wander round?
You know, I'm not going to do the class this year. I didn't have a great turnout, and it just wasn't worth it to miss a whole day of Dayton teaching that class. So I'm going to forego the class and participate in all the other Dayton activities.
Okay, because we need you, Dan, because Colin needs somebody to help keep Frank and I under control. You know, you're a stabilising influence. And
hey, I might be able to keep under control, but not Frank.
Maybe not. Oh dear, but no. It's a fun, and we will enjoy you being with us. So that'll be good. So don't forget, guys, we'll be in Dayton in 2020. So I'd like to thank each and every one of the guys for joining us tonight. I'd like to thank Mr. Leslie Butterfield G0CIB.
Thanks, Martin. It's been a blast.
It's been a blast to have you, Leslie. Mr. Edmund Spicer M0MNG. Good to have you, Edmund.
Yes, thank you for having me on, Martin.
And I'll see you middle of the night on Sunday morning.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Never been to the South Essex Amateur Radio Society's Canvey Island rally before, so can't wait.
Yeah. Well, we never know. If Leslie's not working, he might wander over as well, but I haven't asked him.
I think I'm working nights, so
I
don't know. If I can make it, I will.
I thought you might, but if you can make it, you put your orange shirt on, right?
Does it have to be ironed?
Oh, Leslie.
200 creases on mine.
You're a professional. You're a professional. People want to see you. I
just throw something over the top.
People want to see you, Leslie. You have to make the effort. Okay. I'd like to thank Mr. Dan Romanchik, KB6NU, for joining us.
Well, I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, glad to have you back, mate, and thoroughly enjoy your input. And Ruth Willis, KM4LAO, had to leave us a few minutes ago because she's had to go back to work. She records this in her lunch break, so I'd like to thank her employee for being cooperative on this one for us. So I'd like to say 73 to you all, and we'll catch up in a few weeks' time, and we'll continue with the podcast. 73, guys.
Cheerio.
7-3.
The ICQ podcast. Come for a moment. Stay for an hour.
Now it's time to have a look at the news in brief with me, Colin M6BOY. We start with news here. For anyone interested in YOTA, there's a matching fund drive going on here until the end of February. There is every dollar you donate to Youth on the Air camp will be matched by Steve, Kilo Mike 9 Golf, up to the value of $4,000. Your donations in supporting this unique opportunity for the youth members of our hobby to share with their peers will count double until the end of February. So say funds will finish paying for the camp and to raise a number of campers from 20 to 30. to better meet the demands. Corporate and foundation sponsors have raised most of the funds so far, but they're looking for clubs and individuals to finish the job. So find out more about this by going to youthontheair.org. Listener Tim Watson, Kilo Bravo 1, Hotel November Zulu, pops on a message. So could you do us a favour, could you give us a bit of a mention of this in your upcoming show? So of course we'd love to. The Maine Bicentennial special event takes place in March between the 16th and the 22nd. So basically they've brought together members of the Wireless Association of South Maine along with members of Penn Bay Amateur Radio Club, and they've organised a special event station which recognises the original 9 counties of the state of Maine. There will also be 3 other special event stations for Jameson Tavern in Freeport, the town of Portland and Boston in recognition and contribution to Maine's statehood. Participants can choose to operate at their convenience by signing up on a spreadsheet on the events website, which we'll put at icqpodcast.com. Simply note time block, select a band emoji which to operate, and off you go. Operation will take place on HF, 6 meters, 2 meters, and 70 SEMS. Modes include CW, single sideband, and digital modes. This allows all main amateur radio operators to participate in some form. So there's quite a few special event stations they mentioned. What we got here? We've got 12 in total taking place in Maine for the month of March. So visit icqpodcast.com where you find more information and link to that website. And continuing the theme of special event stations, amateur radio operators in Greenland and Denmark will be celebrating the 80th birthday of Her Royal Highness the Queen of Denmark in 2 DXX entities. Look out for special event stations OX80HM and OZ80HM to be active on all bands until 16th of April this year. QSLs are via OZ1 Alpha Charlie Bravo, and a special royal reward will be available. So good information there if you can work those stations that will be celebrating the birthday of the Queen of Denmark. Now we head over to our features episode, which is a feature questioning, is NanoVNAs any good? Hope you enjoy.
And now what you've all been waiting for, this episode's feature from the ICQ podcast. Hi guys, for this episode's feature, I want to talk to you about the NanoVNA. Now, a lot of you have probably seen these, a lot of you probably already got them, but there are a number of amateurs out there who haven't kept up to date and are not sure what they are. So, I decided to have a look at this little vector network analyzer, the Nano Vector Network Analyzer, and see if it was any good. And in fairness, I was pleasantly surprised. Now, what does it actually do? Well, the NanoVNA will actually display, as one of its display options, a Smith chart on a screen. Now, a Smith chart is used for working out complex impedance matching on transmission lines, aerials, and that sort of thing. If you look at a Smith chart, and I'm not going deep into Smith charts, guys, there are lots of people who could probably explain it better than me, and also lots of useful YouTube videos out there. But a Smith chart, if you look at it, it's comprised of lots of circles and lines and looks very, very complicated. However, for our purposes of tonight, very quickly, it has a centre line that runs left to right, and the centre line that runs left to right is pure resistance. So effectively, it is actually pure resistance, and therefore you're okay. Now, if you're above the line, if what you're plotting is above the line, then it's inductance reactance. If it's below the line, it's capacitive reactance. So if you're trying to set up an error or you're looking at transmission line, you need to know whether you need to add extra capacitance or inductance at your antenna. You can see this on your Smith chart. Now, the centre line across, as I said, told you, it's not marked 50 ohms because depending on the impedance you're trying to measure, you can use a Smith chart for all sorts of different impedances. But for our purposes, in the middle at 1.0 would effectively be 50 ohms for a lot of what we want to do. If the dot on the display on the centre line is right over to the right-hand side, then you have an open circuit. It's infinity. If your marker on the centre line is right over to the left-hand side, you've got a short circuit. So effectively, you can see whether you've got a short circuit or an open circuit, where the resistance is, pure resistance that is, and whether effectively you need to add or add more capacitance or inductance. So, well, that's what a Smith chart does. Now, this little device does Smith charts. It also displays feed loss and SWR and all those sort of things. So it's a very, very useful little device. The device itself is about the size, about half the size of a smartphone. It's got a reasonable size display on it. I'd say, looking at this one, about a 3.5-inch display on it, full colour, and you can display those results on the display. Now, you have 2 channels, so you can look at 2 channels, and it's powered by its own little battery, which is charged by USB, and the screen itself, going back to the screen, is touch screen, so you can use your fingers to touch, or a little stylus would be very useful. Now, most vector network analyzers are horrendously expensive, and if you go with one of the big manufacturers, be prepared to shell out 2 sheds and 2 garages, probably, with the cars involved in that sort of money. However, these little network vector analyzers are absolutely low cost. I mean, I've just done a quick search on the internet, and I found one for £26, which is probably about $30. Now, there are other people selling the same thing for a bit more, but if you look round, that's silly money. But the problem with them is, the big expensive ones, is they're used mainly for microwave, so they go right up from HF right up into the high microwave frequencies. Now, for £26, you ain't going to get something that goes up into the high microwave frequencies, and therefore, is it of any use to us? Well, yeah, of course it is, because this little analyzer will certainly do medium wave, high frequencies, VHF and UHF. In fact, its frequency range is from 50 kilohertz to 900 megahertz. So you can look at a graph between those 2 figures if you want. It becomes very complicated on the screen, and often you're only interested in, say, if you're looking at 2 meters, I want to sweep between 140 megs and 150 megs and see where your antenna is resonant, and that sort of thing. It's very useful for analysing antennas. I've used the one I've got to have a look at antennas that come with handy talkies, and you'd be surprised how bad some of the antennas are for handy talkies. So quite interesting to see that. Now, it runs on a rechargeable battery through the USB port. You can also use the USB port to flash other software, and they do have variants on the software that will do other things as well. I am currently only running with the default software because I still find that does everything I want. As I say, the firmware is updatable, and also you can get online a piece of software that the device will communicate with this USB port and display all the information as well up onto a big screen. So if you've got a computer with a large monitor and you want to get a better view, you could actually display it up. But I think that then loses its portability, because it's a nice little portable device that's very good. Now, why do I think we should have one of these, or they're worth having? Well, our hobby is all about learning about amateur radio and learning about things. And up until now, unless you found one at a rally, and even then they would be expensive, vector network analyzers are expensive. This has now put something in our price range that we can actually use very, very quickly. What do you get when you open the box? Well, you get your network vector analyzer, you get a USB cable, you get 2 patch cables with SMA connectors on, because the device comes with SMA, which is a good thing, seeing as you're going up to 900 megs. So you get 2 SMA patch cables, you get 3 little devices for calibrating it. You get a short circuit, an open circuit, and a 50 ohm load. So one of the things you do when you take it out of the box is you calibrate it, and you have your 3 calibration standards in the box. You know, the accuracy is pretty good, I'd say. I've been quite impressed with the one I've got, and well worth the money. Even if I did pay a fair bit more than £26 that I found one today for. So, what are the good points about it if you're going to go and have a look at one? Well, they're great for education and learning, and that's what our hobby's about. Good thing is you can get them for about £26 or about $30. Yeah, right, they come from China, boys, I know, but it's something to play with. They work very, very, very well, and I'm impressed with the little one I've got. It's useful for ham radio. It certainly covers most of the frequencies I'm interested in. Okay, if I was up in the microwave bands, I'd be out of luck. But most of the time, up as far as UHF is about as far most of us go. So I think that's fair for the price. The instruction manual is online. You can download it along with some other bits and pieces that tell you about vector network analyzers, and that's pretty good. And the last good thing about it is there are lots and lots of displays of videos on YouTube. So there are a lot of videos on YouTube that will help you get up to speed on it very, very quickly. Now, the poor side of it. It's a very delicate device. I wouldn't suggest you sell off your network analyzer or other ones you may have, or your antenna analyzers. Although you can do antenna analyzing with it, it is a very flimsy construction. It could do with a bit better case, and the controls, it wouldn't stand you dragging up a mast and swinging around and doing all sorts of bits and pieces. So you have to treat it as a delicate little device. However, I spotted on eBay just now cases for them for £16, which you can slip it into a more rigid case to protect it, give it a bit more protection. However, on looking at them, it looks like somebody's printing them with a 3D printer. They look a little bit rough around the edges, but, you know, even adding the price of a case, it's still got to be worth giving it a go, I would suggest. So kind of a little device, and I know a lot of you have already got them, but for those who haven't, it's well worth having a look. It's not a lot of money, and if you want to analyse your feed line or your antenna, then it's another tool in your arsenal for not very much money. I hope this has been of use.
Keep your amateur ham radio podcast advert free by donating less than a length of coax. Visit www.icqpodcast.com/donate now. For all the news, links and information, visit www.icqpodcast.com.
Well done there. Thanks a lot for your feature there on the NanoVNA, and great one there pulled together. Certainly something there that should be of interest to our listeners.
Yeah, I hope they were of interest of it, because it's a little device I've had for a while, and it works very well. It's not the best manufactured little device in the world, but at its price point, and it's got even cheaper as the time goes on. If it gets any cheaper, they'll be giving them away.
You know, it's quite interesting. You hear a lot, don't you, about amateurs having little bits and pieces dotted around away with them. So, as I say, it's good to know you got that out finally and had chance to play with it and let us all know what you thought of it. So, thanks a lot for doing that for us. Now, since our last episode, I know you've been chatting to a friend of the show, Scott McDonald, recently, and he sent you an email, didn't he, that catching up on some things he's been up to.
Yeah. Scott contacted me a couple of times. We had an off-record discussion on a couple of things. But nicely, Scott was saying that he looked at the antenna in the new Newbie magazine, and he said it's a centre-fed ZEP, but they recommended lengths of multiples of half waves. So he's kind of, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but effectively Scott was saying that the guys who wrote the article have made it just a little bit more difficult than it really needed to be. If they'd have chosen something like 88 foot or 44 foot and used a one-to-one balun, it would have probably worked just as well. And so that was Scott's feeling on that. And he said that it's just something that probably would have made it easier for the newbie. And certainly when you're thinking of doing things for newbies, you do have to make it as easy as possible. Not because they're thick or anything like that, but it's because we're bringing them into the hobby. If you make things too difficult too early, then it turns people off. Once they've been in the hobby a while, then you can start giving them difficult projects. Hi. So there you go, Colin.
Yeah, I think that's the same with all technical hobbies, isn't it? In fact, when you're new into a technical hobby, there's all these new terms and phrases floating around, and as you say, sometimes keeping it very simple for people just so they get the confidence along the way is certainly very, very important. So, thanks a lot, Scott. Scott's call sign, Kilo Alpha 9 Papa. So thanks a lot, Scott, there for dropping your mail now. Also the mail from Tim Price. Tim is a UK ham, but he's currently in VK3, which is the Victoria area of the world in Australia. And he wanted to just drop us a mail and just say how he's enjoying the show during his travels in Australia. So it's great to hear friendly voices along the way. He said there's lots of sun down there, and he apologises to the team here in the Northern Hemisphere that are, suffering winter at the moment. Anyway, so he's in VK3 at the moment. He's been lucky enough to attend VHF Field Day contest recently. And he's been working with a guy there called Bill Field, VK3 Charlie Whiskey Foxtrot there, working away there. And he's also been doing a bit of SOTA as well. So I know Ed Durant, DD5 Liam Pup, will be very jealous they're doing some SOTA there in Australia. He's also had the opportunity as well of visiting the Melbourne Electronics and Radio Club for their VHF Field Day, located in Mount Blackwood, just about an hour's drive away from Melbourne. And he's taken time to let us know his thoughts and things that he's experiencing now while during his trip. And those include in the Melbourne area that he's experiencing a high level activity on all bands, 6.2, 77s, 23 and 13 centimetres as well. Widespread use of single sideband calling frequency to establish initial contact, then QSY even on 2 meters. And he says, well, there's a use of a vertical polarized 70 SEMS SSB for the club net, and the logic is that many have a white stick vertical, so why not use them for SSB? Great use of bandwidth allocations and viable for more distant stations where FM wouldn't work. So great to hear, Tim, that you're having a lot of fun down there in Australia, and thanks again for setting up a monthly subscription donor as well to the ICQ podcast. So much appreciated. And I'm not sure if you're on your journey home yet, but when you do, safe journeys home. We obviously hope that you've landed back in Blighty, hopefully lovely suntanned up and ready to show off your suntan at the Sutton Cheam Radio Club. So hope you enjoyed that, Tim.
Yeah, well, I've known Tim for quite a while, and Tim, special message to you. You're waiting for me to say something outrageous and naughty, but unfortunately, we have a clean rating, Tim. So as much as I don't improve with age, all the best to you, mate, and send my regards on to your lovely lady Jay, and we'll see you when you get back, Tim.
You never know. Mrs. B might get some Tim Tams. Come back from Australia. We never know. So we'll have to listen, guys, to the next episode and see if that might have been the case. So no pressure on you, Tim, if you're hearing this you're still in Australia. But I think Mrs. B does like a Tim Tam, so there we go. So I say mention donors there. So Tim kindly set up a new monthly subscription donor to ourselves. Those are wonderful. They help keep us paying our way advert free. And Tim's call sign is Golf for Yankee Bravo uniform. And Dave Pyle, Kilo Whiskey 1 Delta X-Ray, also sent along a donation. Thank you guys for helping keep us advert free here on the ICQ podcast. And as always, we'd ask you to consider the value you got from the show. Think how great it is not listening to a bucket load of adverts at the start and end of every show and a break every 5 seconds. And as I say, send what you can our way by visiting icqpodcast.com/donate. I'd like to thank our roundtable guys this episode. It's Leslie, Golf 0, Charlie, India, Bravo, Edmund, Mike 0, Mike November, Golf, Dan, Kilo Bravo 6, November Uniform, and Ruth, Kilo Mike 4, Lima Alpha Oscar. You can keep up to date with what's going on in the amateur radio hobby by keeping in touch at the ICQ podcast website or in our Facebook groups, our Twitter handle at Colin Butland at M1MRB. And as I run through a list of all the goody things we do, I think that just about covers all our thank yous. I think anything last that is to ask you if you've got anything else planned over the next fortnight until our next show.
Well, we mentioned in the What Have You Been Doing, Edmund and I are at a rally the morning this goes out, the South Essex rally over on Canvey Island, so that will be fun. We also said in the main information that, and I'd like to reiterate it, I'd like to thank Howard Mickle for his interviews he's done with Frank, and they've been very, very useful. Howard, we do wish you all the best in whatever you do as you've moved on from the ARRL. And thanks for Scott McDonald once again for we've had quite a few emails, Scott and I, over the last couple of days. But thanks very much, and send my regards on to the lovely Sarah. And hopefully we should see at least one of you if at Dayton, Scott. And don't forget, guys, there's about 8 of us again in Dayton this year. So we're looking forward to seeing you guys. Come up and have a chat with us. We don't bite. Honest. Very well, Frank does, but so I'll keep him under control.
There you go. There could be the ICQ test. Find out if Frank bites with his own teeth or not. Sorry, Frank. But we've got to get orange shirts for Ruth. So as I say, we'll get Ruth in an orange shirt as well, so we identify ourselves from there. Right, but that just about wraps things up. I say, Dad, you've got to go head off and make Mrs. B a cup of tea and find her a bicky. And I'm going to go and deal with some family stuff here as well to get things back on track here, as I say, so we can keep things ticking along. So I'm going to bid you and everyone else listening 73s and wish you all a great fortnight. Enjoy the hobby, and we'll catch up again in a fortnight's time. 73s all.
Yeah, 73.